Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the council meeting, February 7th of 2023. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, anybody would like some amplifying headphones, just raise your hand and somebody will bring them out to you after the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Donna, can you do a roll call, please?
I will. Councilmember Bode.
Here.
Councilmember Sherman. Here. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Here.
Marinesco.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schmidt.
Here.
Councilmember McDowell.
Present.
And Councilmember Peterson via Zoom.
Here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Who needs him?
I think it was jumping right there. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
All right. Does the council have any late changes to the agenda tonight? All right. Do we have any board reports to share?
Mine. I've
Yes.
had my Board of Health the last week and my left board this morning, so
Thank you.
not any news on it.
Right. Has everyone reviewed the items in the consent agenda? Yes. All right, do we have a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda as published.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as published. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We have two presentations this evening. Liz Arbaugh is here to give us Mason County Historical Society Museum fourth quarter report.
Hello, let's see. Okay, here we go. I think so. Yes, it is. So, fourth quarter was pretty good. Let's see if I can make this work now. Here we are. We had over 1,000 visitors. October was especially great because of the Halloween. And it would have been even better if we hadn't run out of candy after about an hour. So, but we have been having fairly consistent attendance. I looked at the book even just for February. We are averaging between 10 and 15 visitors per day, even when the weather is as bad as it is. So I think that's not too bad. Let's. So Facebook is extremely popular. We have been reaching, up to 3,800 people. I think that the latest post has even been higher than that. I think what really seems to do it is if I put a good picture on there, then there's a lot of interaction. So, and that's great because the whole point is to keep the museum in the eye of the public. Same way with our website. 1,100 unique users for the fourth quarter. We've done about $1,500 in online sales, membership, things like that. We slightly lower this year than last, but we have actually sold more items. So it's a dollar thing. But we have our the Art of the Dalby family is still up. We're going to carry that through February at least. It's a great exhibit. I encourage everyone to come and see it. The Dalbys were from Union. They were part of the artist colony, and we have 3 generations exhibited. So that's it. Are there any questions?
I don't have a question, I have a comment.
Yeah.
That if anybody hasn't been to the historical museum, they need to go. It's very interesting, and if you grew up here in Shelton, you may be in that museum at.
Yeah, we do. We have family folders
Yeah.
on a lot of people. So
So it's great place.
thank you.
All right, thank you, Liz. All right, our next up is Kyle is going to present Shelton Mason County Chamber of Commerce fourth quarter report.
So we're doing fourth quarter 2022. We do a lot of year over year compared to last year, same time. And this is our visitor information services update. Maybe. Oh, boy. I have to bring my glasses here. There we go. Okay, so the total number of visitors served at the Chamber's Visitor Centers in Q4 last year decreased by 10% compared to the same period the prior year, but has increased 36.7% over the same time period in 2019 prior to pre-pandemic. Visitors counted here are direct contacts with staff, volunteers. This does not include individuals or groups that access the self-serve brochures, Wild Side Guide, or those who send in an emissary to the visitor center from a larger group. Phone calls during Q4 increased over 2021 counts, have been on an upward trend. The Shelton Mason Chamber of Commerce Facebook page continues to be an effective way to share relevant business news, community happenings, points of interest, and information on hot topics. The Chamber is also a trusted source for relevant, timely information. Q4 last year, we had 17,291. The Hood Canal Visitor Center Facebook page. The page shares tourism related topics. This includes suggestions for things to do in places around Hood Canal region, including the city of Shelton, Mason County, Washington State Parks, and Olympic National Forest. Our unique partnership with the ONP and the United States Forest Service, along with our regular interactions with the Rangers, provides us insights and credible information to share with the traveling public. Total outreach from that was actually 14,898. Special events, fourth quarter saw strong visitor presence and phone calls from out-of-town visitors inquiring about events in Shelton. Thousands of children lined the streets for a spectacular trick-or-treating event. Oyster Fest always draws thousands of visitors from the region and from across the nation. Holiday Magic in Christmastown draws crowds from local and out-of-town visitors alike. Many calls are received in anticipation of the lights, trees, maze, and parade. The Chamber actively promotes events and festivals via social media, its quarterly publication, and by offering credible and easy accessible information. We also answer phone and inquiries from day visitors and those seeking lodging, dining, and referrals. And go. So our Google landing page, there's no way I'm going to see the percentages on this. So we had 1,000. Is it okay if I go closer and speak? Okay. So we had 133 profile interactions. That's up 29%. Again, this is year over year. People that viewed the business profile was up 77%. And then searches that showed our business chamber was up 95, or 96.5%. Then for Hood Visitor Information Center, we had 308 profile interactions, and that was up 27%. People that viewed the business profile was 2,427. It's actually down 8.2%. But searches that show the business in profile searches was up 17.9% or 630.
That's it.
Any questions for comments for Kyle?
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. At this time, members of the public are invited to make public comment on any topic that's not listed on the agenda. Donna, do we have anybody interested in making public comment tonight?
Yes, we do have some general public comment. First is Dean Jewett.
Dean Jewett, lifetime Mason County member. Just wanted to give you my status report of downtown, which I'm pretty sure hopefully you're all aware of it. So far, within the last couple of weeks, I think I counted almost 29 orphan shopping carts. If you're not aware of that, I'm sure that you see them all over town. We've got a couple that are in the way of construction by where they're doing the railroad crossing. Target has put their shopping carts on lockdown. Safeway in Aberdeen did the same thing. Last I know, we still haven't had any leadership from Shelton have any conversations with our big box stores regarding shopping carts. So we don't even need to draft one ourselves. We can actually rob an ordinance that's already working and already in effect in multiple cities. Federal Way, Enumclaw, Eatonville. You know, there's a lot of them that are already out there. Okay. I think it's time that we touch base on our no lay lie ordinance that we kind of kicked down the road that we had a study session on. We're having our alcoves inundated and taken over for urination, defecation, you name it, it's happening. I do applaud the city and the police officers for having a better approach at Brewer Park. It seems that if somebody shows up there, they're moved along quite rapidly. But that's just a push that has pushed them into these alcoves. So now you're putting this burden onto businesses. We already have to lock up all the garbage cans. We had individuals going through our garbage can in the alley for over 3 hours. They were digging through it. That's unacceptable to me. I don't understand it. We've had businesses that have had to spend their own money to add security. We have Bank of America that had to put up chain link. We had the VFW that had to put up chain link. We had Safeway, the back of their building, that they had to cut down all their landscaping. Multiple people in the alleys have to lock up and provide chains and cameras. I'm just kind of appalled at why we have to do that. And that stems from, what does it stem from? Lack of enforcement. Now that we have a jail that we can use, we have some transportation that we can do. Maybe it isn't the prime place to put somebody that's having a mental issue or has an addiction. But I tell you what, if they get in there and they get their head clear, then they can help make some better decisions for themselves as well. Sometimes that's where it needs to start. But to keep doing what we've always done, we're going to keep getting what we always got. And what we got isn't working. And I'm sure that you are very well aware of that. Thank you.
Next is Jackie Jewett.
Decided not to speak tonight. Thank you.
Okay. So we have quite a list tonight. Christopher Penoyer, are you signed up for general public comment?
Sorry, I signed in the wrong place. I didn't get it.
Okay. Terry Evans, do you have a general public comment or an
I
annex?
didn't mean to sign.
Okay,
Thanks, Bill.
you're welcome. How about Athena Ayers?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I just wanted to come and thank each of you for your support in our grand opening of the Recovery Cafe. We had an amazing turnout, and for those of you who don't know what that is, the Recovery Cafe is meant to be a space for people who identify with recovery. That can be recovery of substances, mental health, domestic violence, and trauma in general, to include homelessness. So far, we've only been open for a couple of days, but we've had a good amount of participation. We've got some classes up and going. And so if you're ever interested, our hours for that are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 10 to 6 starting out. Additionally, in regards to the orphaned shopping carts, we have hundreds of people who are sleeping on the streets with nowhere to go. And while I agree that having orphaned shopping carts is a problem in our community, having real human beings out on the streets is a bigger problem. Just a couple Fridays ago, we did the pit count, of which I participated outreach for with Tammy and a couple other people from other agencies. And in one afternoon, I encountered almost 100 people who were living on the streets or in places not meant for habitation, to include their cars or abandoned buildings and such. One of those people was a young woman with a 2-month-old baby. So forgive me if I feel less empathy for the shopping carts and more for the human beings. Thank you.
Okay. So there is someone by the name of Gary that signed up. Last name maybe starts with a W.
Oh, we,
Were you signed up to make a public
Gary,
comment?
did you want to talk about that?
No? Okay. And Thomas Donovan, are you wanting to make a public comment
was gonna speak on the other.
on the annexation?
Yeah.
Okay. And John Gray?
Station.
Okay. And Monty Ritter?
On the annexation.
Okay. So we have one more person for general public comment, and that is Colleen Carmichael via Zoom.
Hi, I'm Colleen Carmichael, and I'm the Executive Director for Quixote Communities. I just wanted to give a quick update on the Mason County Housing Needs Assessment that was completed by FCS. Mason County paid for this to find out what the housing crisis is in Mason County specifically. So this is a quick snapshot of that. The poverty and what is called ALICE household, that's asset limited income constrained households. In Mason County and Shelton, they exceed the state average. 4 out of 10 households in Mason County meet that criteria. So in Shelton, there's 19.6 households in poverty level. Mason, it's 12.5. Washington is 9.9. Alice households, again, that's asset limited, income constrained, 34.9 in Shelton, 28.1 in Mason, and 23.2 in Washington. The key finding also stated that over 2,000 applicants are on public housing wait lists, and the houseless population, which last year was 238, as Athena mentioned, we have a new count coming. We'll let you know what that's going to be in the next couple of months. Total housing needs, 15,500 units are needed for what we have right now. Barriers, finding funding for public housing, voucher navigation staff is limited. The timing of the public and sewer water extensions is extensive. Housing costs are rising faster than incomes. Opportunities, city and county revenue from affordable housing levies, immediate market demands for rentals, recent Shelton code changes, welfare, and also our Quixote communities for the permanent supportive housing. Housing needs by income level, new housing needs for 14,054 dwelling units over the next 20 years in order to meet the need. There is an immediate demand for 326 government assisted units and immediate market demand for 376 rental units. Why is this important? It's important because we keep stating to you that homelessness is not just a homelessness issue. It's not a societal issue by itself. It is a housing issue. And I think that the city of Shelton is trying to do their best, as is Mason County, to continue to increase the number of units. So I ask those of you at the here in the audience today to support that effort, because to get people off the streets, we need to provide housing for them. And I hope you will see that agencies like ourselves and others that are providing these services are reducing that number and making a difference in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else signed up for general public comment?
I have some
Can you-
questions. Do we address them at?
Is general public comment?
It's about the laydown yard. I
Okay.
had questions about.
That is on the agenda, so you can speak with that on the agenda. Come on up, Susan.
I think I signed up in the wrong place.
Susan. Hi, thanks for letting me speak. I'm Susan Kirchhoff. I'm the Director of the Youth Connection, and I just want to say thank you to all of you because you guys have been very supportive in moving our project forward. Since we've moved into the downtown area, for those that don't know, I run a Youth Connection. It's a drop-in center for homeless and at risk of homeless young people that are 12 to 24. In our process, we've served since 2019, 180 individuals have came into our center. 124 of those, more than that, have came into our center that have signed up for services. 120 of them have literally been homeless. That means they've lived in a place not meant for habitation, on the streets, in the tents. We have successfully housed 120 of those into permanent destinations. The Youth Connection, through our intensive case management and programs, have successfully moved 104 individuals into positive, successful housing, and that's important for us to know. I just said that, but I read it too. Sorry. Through many short-term grant opportunities currently running, we have 5 off-site shelter houses. With that, we have an 83% success rate. The state average is 60%. Just so you know, we're way above that. Rapid rehousing, the same thing. State average is 60%. We're hitting 89%. That means 89% of our people are not going back into homelessness. We are successfully keeping them housed. And the only way that we've been able to do that is to work through our programs. We've doubled them up, and we've just been very creative in ways to find them housing. The reason I'm speaking tonight is I know you're talking about an ordinance, and I just am excited that you guys are willing to help us move forward as we're buying our building. The intent is to put 12 transitional housing units because our current offsite shelter houses, the funding will run out in July and between July and September. And these units will continue to allow us to meet the success of what we're doing. I do also want to just give a kudos to my team publicly, because we have been weekly going to different parks and picking up garbage that are in the parks. So you'll see my team out in the parks, and you'll see us wearing our uniform because I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And we want to see our young people really making a difference in what they're doing. And we are in a housing crisis, and we're just trying to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience like this talk on general public comment, not on an item on the agenda? All right, then we can move on. Tonight, Public Works Director Jay Harris has information for us about granting a public utility and access easement.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Jay Harris, your Public Works Director. So Bostrom Lane is in the northerly part of the city off of Island Lake, and it's a little gravel roadway. And in 1995, my predecessors, probably 3 or 4 way before me, issued a license agreement with the Roberts that lived adjacent next door, so they could build a gravel roadway to access their property. An adjacent property owner came to us, to the Roberts, and are requesting access to cross the property also. And so rather than a license agreement, we decided it's best with the city attorney to just issue a ingress egress easement for Bostrom Lane. It'll be maintained privately. It's way out in the UGA, right at the corner of the city. It also just crosses at the far corner of our watershed property. Road's already built. It'll also allow for utilities to cross through there. If there's sewer water, that will be extended through the area in the future. Washington Standard Land Company LLC is the current property owners adjacent to the Roberts. And there's some sketches in there with the proposed easement and legal descriptions and that sort of thing. And that's the end of my presentation.
Anyone sign up public comment on?
No, we don't, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we have any, or do we have a motion?
Move to forward resolution number 1247 1022 to February 21st, 2023 action agenda.
Second.
Comments or questions for Jay?
Oh.
We have,
I just have a question. So that will be used, will be able to be used for anybody that wants to build back there or,
That is correct. It'd be open to anybody in the public.
okay, all right.
we have a motion and a second to forward resolution number 1247 1022 to February 2023 action agenda. All in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. City Manager Knighton has details for us about revising the council protocol manual.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council. The protocol manual that you have currently was adopted in January of 2019. And January of this year, council held a study session to discuss potential revisions to that protocol manual. And that resulted in the document that you have before you this evening. There are a couple of items that I just wanted to mention and highlight the changes for. The first is found on page 14, and that is the section 2.07B, and it relates to council members on outside boards. The language that we added matched up with the council's discussion on January 10th of this year regarding number of absences, number of unexcused absences, and then we clarified that that council member would then be replaced by another council member on that board, not as a city council person. So just wanted to clarify that. The second one is found at the bottom of page 25. It's actually page 26 of the packet due to formatting, but that language is section 7.08. And it removes the language about attendance by audio visual. Now everybody uses Zoom or Microsoft Teams or some other video conferencing app. So that language there is intended to clarify that change and still encourage folks to attend in person unless they're not feeling well. But they can still attend through audio visual or otherwise. Third revision is section 8.06, and that is just a technical change that we had made previously. It stated, I believe, the Wednesday before a council meeting is when all your materials were to be published. And we wanted to make sure both the council and the community had at least a week to review those materials before your council meeting where you consider those, whatever happens to be on the agenda. So that's just a little bit of clarifying language there. The final one that we made in this version is section 8.07M as in Mary. And that removes the requirement to state an address and only state whether the speaker is a Shelton resident or a member of the county or resides elsewhere. No need to state a personal address when you're making a comment. Two other items that were discussed during January 10th. Or a little bit later when we ask for additional discussion. One is changing the maximum amount of time for the public comment based on the number of folks in the audience, like we have tonight. Your your current version already allows you to do that, and under section 807D. And if an unusual number of people wish to speak during general public comment, council may, by a majority vote, limit the amount of time, reduce the 3 minutes to 2, those types of things. So to expeditiously move your meetings along. The next section was moving general public comment from the beginning of the agenda, like you had this evening. I believe it's item E after the presentations, to toward the end to allow council more time or a better opportunity to discuss general public comment and potentially add items to the new business portion of your agenda, which is last. So those are the changes we made for you this evening, and happy to hear any discussion or suggestions further before you move this along to your next regular council meeting on February 21st.
All right. Is there any public comment, Donna?
No, there isn't, Mr. Mayor.
And do we have a motion?
Move forward City Council Protocol Manual revisions to the February 21st, 2023 action agenda for further consideration.
All right, comments or questions? Does anyone want to discuss the possible changes for the moving public comment?
I'm good with it.
Moving it or leaving it?
I'm good with the proposed changes.
It's not a change.
No, it's not in your current
No.
revision, but that's an item that came up. So just wanted to, throw that out for council discussion.
So you're saying that we would move the public comment towards the end of the meeting?
Yes.
So instead of just a little bit of clarification, instead of item E like it is this evening, or D, when we do not have presentations before the council, we would move that to immediately after the city manager's report, but prior to new items for discussion.
So. Are we good with adding that or?
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there any other comments or questions? We have a motion and a second to forward the city council protocol manual revision to the February 21st, 2023 action agenda for further consideration. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We are recessing from a regular meeting to open a public hearing. Community Economic Development Director Jay Hill has a question for us about appending the Shelton Municipal Code.
Learned my lesson from last time. I'm just going to hold it up here. So thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is a request to amend the municipal code to allow a use that's actually already enumerated in our code. Within the list of enumerated uses, we have rooming houses, which is a traditional form of housing that's existed basically through history where people take in renters and whatnot. We have a definition that basically allows this for to 3 or more non-transient persons. There is a body of federal housing law that allows for rentals of less than that. So it's not regulated in that way. So the idea is this applies to kind of various forms of congregate living. So whether you're renting out a couple rooms in a large house that you would own to people who meet this non-transient definition. Also, the impetus for this was actually the Shelton Youth Connection requesting a very similar form of congregate living. And then we started looking into the definitions. We found we already had this, but it's not applied to any of our zoning districts right now. And then this also dovetails along with some other, we'll say general observations and complaints that we receive through code enforcement and other things about, there's too many people living in this house, cars are blocking the streets, things like that. So not only does this have, by applying this to the zones and regulating it as a conditional use in some zones, like the neighborhood residential, we can actually mitigate some of the factors, make sure that we're providing for the right amount of parking and landscaping, noise, glare, all of the kinds of things that we try to mitigate with kind of more intense residential uses. So this has the dual effect of allowing for some more of these kind of traditional adult congregate living kinds of situations. It does not affect group homes, residential care facilities, things like that. Those are separately regulated. And then it has the impact of being able to help out with maybe some of the code enforcement issues that we're having as well. So we recommend, I can go into more details if you have more questions about which zones we've looked at applying this to, but generally speaking, the majority of the city is what we call neighborhood residential. It's probably the use pattern that we're most familiar with. And in that particular zone, it would be a conditionally permitted use, which requires visiting the hearings examiner and have a public hearing, notice to the neighbors, things like that. So this wouldn't, we're not looking to try to creep too far into the neighborhoods with these types of uses. It would be permitted in kind of our downtown and mixed use districts where we think these things are a little bit more appropriately located. And with that, we would ask for a motion to advance this and happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Jay. Donna, anyone's different public comment?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Susan, you mentioned you wanted to talk on this one.
No, it's what I already said.
Okay. And we have a reading of ordinance number 1999-1222.
Ordinance number 1999-1222. An ordinance of the city of Shelton, Washington, amending section 20.06.0 .030 of the Shelton Municipal Code related to rooming houses.
Thank you, Donna. Do we have a motion?
I move to forward ordinance number 1999-1222 to the Feb 21, 2023 action agenda for further consideration.
Second.
All right, comments or questions? No? All right. We have a motion and a second to forward ordinance number 1999-1222 to the February 21st action agenda for further consideration. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This public hearing is closed and we're opening another public hearing. Senior planner Jason Dos has details for us about periodic review of the Shoreline Master Program.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. As you may recall, in 2021, we wrapped up a comprehensive update to the city's shoreline management program. Those are the regulations that kind of overlay our zoning and critical areas ordinances to address areas that are near shorelines, what are referred to as shorelines of the state. That includes in the city, primarily Oakland Bay and Goldsboro Creek, but in our UGA, because we have to plan for our urban growth area as well, that includes Mill Creek, Johns Creek, Island Lake, and Goose Lake. In July of 21, the council approved an ordinance that adopted all of what we thought at the time were all the required changes. Part of the process after a local jurisdiction adopts the changes, you formally submit it to Department of Ecology, and they have a bevy of people that look through it and make sure that all the alphabet soup, RCW, WACs are all addressed in that update. They came back to us with a letter with a couple of recommended, they gave us a conditional approval of the update and gave us a letter with, I suppose I could read my staff report, huh? Basically 4 recommended changes that are so non-substantive. I regret the fact that I have to take up your time with a public hearing for it, to be honest. It affects 3 chapters of the code of the Shoreline Master Program. One of them in chapter 2 simply lifts the language out of one section, inserts it into another, because ecology correctly pointed out that the language was included in the exemptions portion, but it's not an official exemption that's noted there. It is exempted by another section of state law, but not in the official shoreline exemptions. I know it doesn't really make sense, but they wanted it put in the applicability section, not in the exemption sections. Exact same language, put in a different section. We amended 2 definitions to meet current state definitions, and then softened, I guess is the term, the reference to the city's critical areas ordinance, and that was at Ecology's request because they wanted to be a soft reference, not a hard reference. We literally cited code sections. They wanted it just cited that you follow the critical areas ordinance. And we're recommending that you place this on your February 21st meeting for adoption.
Thank you, Jason. Anyone sign up for public comment?
No, we don't, Mr. Mayor.
All right. We have a reading of ordinance number 2000-1222.
Ordinance number 2000-1222. An ordinance of the city of Shelton, Washington relating to land use, amending chapters 2, 5, and 8 of the Shelton Shoreline Master Program.
Do we have a motion?
Move to place ordinance number 2001-1222 on the February 21st, 2023 action agenda for final adoption.
Second.
All right, comments or questions?
I've got one. Sorry, I gotta ask this. I gotta get back to it in the packet. The substantial, what was it, Jason?
Substantial improvement.
The substantial improvement. How did you arrive at $8,506 or something?
That is not me. That is an official state calculation done by the Office of Financial Management. And our definition was old, dated, and incorrectly noted. I forget what the old threshold was. Essentially what it says is if you're doing work that would normally require a shoreline permit and it's valued at less than that threshold dollar amount, they say a permit is not required. So it's just, they update it every, I want to say 7 years in the RCW, and it just so happens that we overlapped between the time we drafted the changes The council adopted them and I finally submitted them for review because there's a lot of gyrations you have to go through. You have to fill out all these things and submit certain copies and certifications and all these things. Took a couple months to submit it. In between that time, they updated the value threshold. So that was one of the comments that came back.
All right,
Thanks.
any other comments or questions? We have a motion and a second to place ordinance number 2000-1222 on the council action agenda at its regular scheduled meeting on February 21st, 2023. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This public hearing is closed and we're opening another public hearing. We have another item from Jason. He has information about updating the standards, flood damage prevention.
Thank you again, Mayor and members of the council. As you may recall, in 2019, FEMA updated all of the West Coast, all the West Coast flood mapping. And at that time, we undertook a very comprehensive update of our flood management program. We adopted the new, more accurate, updated flood maps. We updated our regulations to what was then required at the time. And that was preceded, I want to say, maybe 6 years previous to that, an extremely comprehensive update that took a long time. I think we even brought on a consultant to help with it. And part of the reason for that was because the state didn't require, they would update all these regulations. And when you're getting peppered with all these regulation changes, it's hard to keep straight what is exactly required to go in these ordinances. So they would periodically have these community assistance visits that Ecology and FEMA would do, come to the city, review our regulations, review how we're doing things. And, basically check all the boxes, make sure we're following FEMA guidelines for flood safe construction. Typically, those are followed by a bunch of recommendations. You should alter your regulations to address this because this came, up with this recent legislation at the federal level. And as everyone's aware, as time goes on, we're seeing more and more severe events. We're seeing more damage done because of flooding. And each event, I think, is a learning experience for emergency managers. So they lobby Congress, they revise the regs, and in turn, it all trickles down. We have to revise ours. To be a little more proactive about it, Ecology has been doing 3 to 5 year community assistance visits, and we just got done with ours this past year. And what you see here is in staff's opinion, there's several changes proposed, but most of them relate to definitions, clarifying what we were requiring already. It's just now the federal government requires you explicitly state that every structure you have to retain an elevation certificate, for example. We did that, but we didn't have it explicitly stated in our code. So a lot of these changes are things like that. I can answer specific questions. I didn't come prepared to walk you through every single change, but honestly, I've been doing flood review in the city for 17 years. We've been implementing these requirements. Just now they're explicitly stated. That's the best way I can relay it. Because all of these are required in the documents we typically refer to when reviewing development in the flood zone. And again, as with the previous one, we are recommending this be placed on your February 21st meeting for adoption.
Thank you. Anyone sign up for public testimony, Donna?
No, Mr. Mayor.
We have a reading of ordinance number 2001-1222.
Ordinance number 2001-1222. An ordinance of the city of Shelton, Washington, amending chapter 18.07 of the Shelton Municipal Code related to flood damage prevention.
Thank you. May we have a motion?
I move to place ordinance number 2001-1222 on the February 21st, 2023 act agenda for final adoption.
A second.
Right, comments or questions?
What about along Goldsboro? What is the flood stuff along Goldsboro Creek?
Believe it or not, most of Goldsboro Creek is the floodway. So you have a floodway where you have swift moving waters, and then you have a flood zone where waters will come up either by tide or overflowing banks of a creek.
Okay.
Most of Goldsboro Creek is contained within the banks. Most of it is floodway until you get down to about say, rough plus or minus Third Street, then it starts overtopping the banks, typically from a king tide. You typically won't see Goldsboro Creek overtop its banks of its own accord. It's typically coupled with a king tide, lots of rain, high water, nowhere for it to go. So it essentially eddies at about First Street and kind of fills everything up, comes up through storm drains, you name it. We do have a link to FEMA's digital mapping on our website. If you get on the city's website, get on the community development page, click on flood zone information, and you can get digital mapping. You can type in your address and see where you're at relative to the flood zones, even if you're in Mason County. It's a nationwide mapping tool.
So at about Fourth Street or 4.5 Street, the street that runs behind Fifth Street. It sometimes the water comes really up pretty close to the top, sometimes over. So would that be part of the flood zone?
If it's mapped, yes.
Okay.
I mean, that might be, but there are areas that flood that are far outside the flood zone. I mean, you'll have low-lying areas and neighborhoods and stuff that flood, but they're not considered flood zones for the purposes of FEMA.
Okay.
All right, any other comments or questions? We have a motion.
Hail.
There, we go and look at it in a few minutes.
There you go. We have a motion and a second to place ordinance number 2001-1222 on February 21st, 2023 action agenda for final approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This public hearing is closed and we are opening another public hearing. Our last public hearing is to consider an annexation request for Peacock Ridge. Jason has details.
Oof, that graphic did not turn out how I hoped it would. It's not, could we make that any bigger? Oh, that's a little better. Okay. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, one more time. In September of last year, the city received what's called a notice of intent to petition the city for annexation from representatives of 4 property owners represented on this map. Alpine Evergreen, Green Diamond, JPS Properties, and the Benses, which this area you see on the map here encompasses approximately 370 acres of land. The land has been designated in the city's long-term planning documents, at least back 50 years, as being within the city's. It was referred to differently pre-Growth Management Act, which is in the mid-90s. But for lack of a better term, in our urban growth area, our sphere, our development area. I mean, I've seen several terms used for it. It's always been slated for residential uses. It still is to this day. These properties are located in the Shelton urban growth area, designated neighborhood residential, which is the predominant zoning in town. That's what you see. Most of our neighborhoods are zoned. The adjacent neighborhoods are zoned that. Terrace Heights, as you can see on there, Mankey's Alpine View. Hiawatha Park is actually outside city limits, but it does have the same pre-annexation zoning, neighborhood residential. So in September, the applicant applied to the city with what's called a notice of intent to annex. And essentially we came to the council at that time, showed the council the configuration. There are just some cursory matters that are determined at that time. Does the council accept, reject, want to modify the annexation area? Do they take on certain obligations of debt the city has? The answer to the first question was no. The answer to the second question was yes. And then the council approved the resolution, which then authorizes the properties to go through what's called a formal petition for annexation. And typically what you would do if you didn't have full ownership and full property owner concurrence with it, you would circulate a petition to all the property owners, which they've done. And if you get over 60% of the assessed value of property owners on board, you can then petition the city and annex into the city from the UGA. In this case, they have 100% of the property owners on board, want to annex into the city. No development is proposed at this time. We're not considering changing any zoning. Essentially, this has been designated in our long-range documents, in our current comprehensive plan, and anticipated for development. It's addressed in our utility plans for water and sewer. It's, you know, generally speaking, until you get an actual development proposal, you can't work out the finer nuances. The next step essentially would be for this city council to make a decision. We want to accept it. Do we not want to accept it? Then there's some permutations we would have to go through, provided the annexation gets approved. We've got to provide some documentation to the state. That'll take a little time to get together, but then it would basically become effective and part of city limits within 5 days of the ordinance passing. And we're requesting that you place it on your February 21st meeting for action.
Thank you, Jason. I know we have public comment, Donna, so who's first?
Yes, there is, Mr. Mayor. First is Mark, is it Golda?
Good evening. I'd like to speak as a resident of the Hiawatha subdivision, which lies north of that map, just immediately north of the proposed annexation area. Regarding the public notice of this proposed annexation, it's kind of rich on high altitude photos, but pretty poor on details. And my previous speaker was kind of vague about what exactly we're going to be putting in there, except the fact it's going to be residential. I'd like to have a few of the questions answered, not here, but to put on the record. What are going to be the residential density limits for these properties that are proposed for annexation? What infrastructure in particular is going to be provided and who's going to pay for it? And finally, will this access to this proposed area be coming in from Hiawatha Park? That's an area of really deep concern in my subdivision. And we're very anxious to not have any access to this from our subdivision. Let's see if I left anything out. Regarding the property owned by Green Diamond, if you take a look at the northernmost area there, which is abuts my property. Some time ago, I had approached Green Diamond in the matter of purchasing some of the property there, directly adjacent to my property. And he told me that it was not for sale because it was a wetland and subject to frequent flooding. And I think the council ought to take into account before permits are issued for developing that part, that it's a wetland. And it seems to me that's a no-go situation. But anyway, I thought I'd put on the record. These three questions need to be answered in articulate form in great detail before approval. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Our next person is Larry Robertson.
Thank you for letting me speak here. I have one question that I didn't quite understand is that, and which we can answer later, is he said that it goes to the council meeting within 2 or 3 weeks, that it would be approved and then it would be added to the city of Shelton, and then maybe I misunderstood him. So that meant that this annexation would be done in 3 weeks or 2 weeks and it would be done. My second question was it appears to be a very large area of just forest land, and the cost to develop, which he said there's no development now, which seemed odd that somebody would want to be in and have no development in mind. That city sewer and water and all that stuff, the cost that would take to, service this area would be quite expensive. Would it be, just like, who's paying for all that, and are all those costs going to be passed on to all the city residents or people that are affected by it? And a third of all was, it just recently, in fact, just a couple of days ago, King 5 put an article out how that studies have been done that chemicals are leaching into Puget Sound, affecting the southern resident killer whales and all the other things. And it's what, the effect of all this added sewer through the existing sewer plant. Is it adequate to house whatever they would have the density for that 300 acres or whatever it could be? is the city sewer adequate to provide, services for that many more people? And if not, is there a cost added or something that's been already looked at that's going to affect, the people, the residents, or whoever might be affected by that added development there? Otherwise, I doubt, you could be into the city, but why would you want to be annexed to the city if you're just going to grow trees? So assuming that, something else is going to happen, even though there's nothing proposed, I'm sure it's in the back of somebody's mind that it will be proposed. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Damian Reed. Okay. How about someone with maybe the last name Fletcher? Okay, all right, no problem. Thomas Donovan.
Hello, Thomas Donovan here, and I live in Terrace Heights, the upper right corner up there. And I just want to know if, well, the other day I'm in my kitchen and I see two guys in my backyard, chainsaw, machete, whacking away. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on here? I just want to know, I live, since I live at the end of Terrace Heights, Terrace Boulevard, I just want to know, I know growth is inevitable, of course, but of course, I'm probably like everybody else. I just don't want it in my backyard, And I want to know the easement or whatever into what might be like a lot of homes. Is that going to be coming right up in front of my house? And where all these kids run out there and play, and the dogs and all that, so that's what I'm here for. Because I don't know about these whole, the whole business part of it. I just don't want it in my backyard, like I think a lot of people. So that's all I have. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
And we have John Gray.
My name is John Gray. I live on La Crosse Court. And I'm really not opposed to the annexation, but I know that that is going to lead to development. And that is going to lead to issues of access. Right now, today, there's one way in and out of that property. One could consider the 370 acres as one great big cul-de-sac. So if we annex this and the development begins, the question becomes, how are folks going to get in and out of there? Alpine Way, Peacock Hill Road, both empty into 13th Street at the rather complicated intersection of Shelton Springs Road, 13th Street. And I can tell you at any time of the day, that intersection can be a problem. It is borderline impossible at about 7:30 in the morning when everybody's going to school. And it's borderline impossible to negotiate that intersection at about 2:30 in the afternoon when everybody's coming home from school. And that's just for the residents that live on Mount Kings Alpine View. We're talking maybe a couple dozen homes. We're talking about the folks that are in the Alpine apartments. So what happens when you add several hundred more homes? Where are these people going to get in and out of there? I personally think that that's a significant enough issue that it should be adequately resolved before the annexation takes place. Thank you.
And we have Monty Ritter.
Thank you. My name is Monty Ritter. I live on the top of Upper Canyon Creek. My house is over on the Capitol Hill side, and the backyard is up against this proposed annexation in the wetlands down on the southeast corner of that Green Diamond property. Years ago, when years ago when Simpson Timber Company owned it, I would drive out the south part of my property and drive across the creek and I'd go across the old logging road and I'd pop out where they eventually built that Olympic College of Shelton. And that used to be kind of a nice way to get up to top of the hill before they had the Walmart and all that. I was looking, when I get down to the bottom right-hand corner of the Green Diamond property now, I could look across the street in the wintertime, I'm sorry, across the creek in the wintertime when all the leaves were down. And I could see the northeast corner of the city limits, which is where Fogarty Street and Maple Street would link up. So I live on Maple Street up there. And so just across the creek, I could see from my logging road access the top of the city right there. And it was a nice trail. I was on the Mason County Park and Trail Citizens Advisory Board, and we did a lot of outreach and talking to the people in the community. And one of the most important things to the community would be a nice trail that would connect the schools up here on the top of the Shelton area by the hospital, you know, and the high school. It would be giving them a nice safe trail to get all the way up. If you look to the top of this proposed annexation there, that's just the south end of the port of Shelton property. And so there'd be a way to get over to the port of Shelton and have some access to the it's not shown right here. It's a little higher than what's right there, but there'd be a nice access over to the port of Shelton. Thank you. And you can see right there. Yeah, right there. And you'd have a nice way to get up there. So we'd have eventually, if this annexation went through, I was pleased to see that the council's aware that developers are required to put some property into the common good for parks and trails. So if you go forward with this annexation, one of the things you can do when they do come forward with their proposal is you can say, you know, okay, well, let's get a nice little safe trail, get the kids off of Johns Prairie Road. One of the things we did is we talked to the people up there on the Johns Prairie Road, all the commercial businesses, and both the Port of Shelton and the PUD3, they can't let us use their properties. Unfortunately, PUD3 has other power companies using those transmission lines, and we can't use their land. And the Port of Shelton and all these other businesses don't like having kids and bicyclists and everybody running, you know, alongside and in front of all their trucks and everything. That's unfair, pardon.
Thank you.
You get the point. I think it's an important thing for the community, and there's a lot of reasons for you guys to look forward to this annexation, even if there is no proposal at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
That completes our list, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone online?
And no, there is no one on Zoom.
Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to speak on this proposed annexation? All right, may we have a reading of ordinance number 1998-1222.
Ordinance number 1998-1222. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Shelton, Washington, annexing certain property located within the City of Shelton urban growth area into the City of Shelton corporate limits.
Thank you, Donna. Do we have a motion?
I move to place ordinance number 1998-1222 on the agenda for February 21, 2023.
Second.
All right, comments or questions? Jeff or Jason, a lot of the questions and comments tonight would be addressed in a SEPA review and fire department review for entrance and exits and all that stuff down the road. And there'll be more public hearings on that.
There will be. So based on the concerns I've heard tonight, we will put together a FAQ, frequently asked questions, particularly specifically about this annexation, and address some of those concerns. Some of them are unknowable until the property owners actually submit their plans for development, and then we can address any concerns at that point. But you're correct, there will be further public hearings in front of a hearings examiner to flesh out those specific issues, but the broader questions, who pays, you know, where's the infrastructure? Those we can answer because they're generally applicable to any development.
And we're kind of past that. Is a quick.
Real quick, we're asking those frequently asked questions, will there be a website, that can be submitted?
Yeah, we will make sure there's a link. We'll work with our communications specialist tomorrow and try to get those up. Hopefully before the end of the week, but potentially early next week.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I also live in Terrace Heights and my property actually abuts that. I will have a neighbor as well. I mean, nobody wants a neighbor if they don't have one, but unfortunately, we need some houses here in Shelton for a lot of reasons. For workforce housing, we need nice people to live. A lot of our people who work here in the prison, in the jail, in Sierra Pacific, they all travel out of town. And they're spending their money out of town too. I mean, we really need to build some houses, and this is a great location. We're not gonna be building on wetlands. I mean, there's gonna be a huge process before we even get to that point, and I'm sure it'll be, you know, a few years down the road before we even start something like that. But I'm excited that we're bringing that into the city, and I'm excited that we have some potential growth and some houses here.
Well said.
All right.
I would jump into and just say that there were some really valid concerns and they are being taken into consideration, especially the access to ingresses and egresses. It's the one road in is not. Yeah. So it's all definitely gonna be looked at.
And moving forward, we can construct, we can environmental design it and make it environmentally friendly, and how we construct, and we can zone it, we can make different, like you said, the square footage. And we can do a lot of things to make this what we want it to be. And I think that's an opportunity. And I think that, especially with the size that we're at this weird tipping point that Shelton is at, where it doesn't make sense for economies of scale unless we get a little bit bigger. So this is in the urban growth area, and I'm like super huge environmental person, but this will set aside for us to develop here. And if we develop it correctly, then we can do it responsibly, and I think we should move forward.
All right, any other comments or questions? Go ahead, we'll let somebody else. Malik, go ahead.
Public comments closed.
Yeah, I left that.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Olene Steele, and I just wanted to bring about a thought that I think we need to think about the impact on the school districts as well. If you're bringing in that many families, how is this going to impact our school districts and the number of teachers we're going to need? So another food for thought.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We have a motion and a second to place ordinance number 1998-1222 on the action agenda for February 21st. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This public hearing is closed and we're back to a regular meeting. We're going to take a 5-minute recess for council stretch. Right.
Donna, is Deidre back?
There we go. All right, welcome back, everybody. Finance Director Mike Giddens has information for us about updating the master fee schedule.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of council. We're bringing back to you the master fee schedule. If you'll recall, we brought it to you in early January, and then we've made some changes, not to any of the fees specifically, but the way the fee schedule is presented. The fire fees are attached as addendum A. We've worked with Mason Fire, and really what we're going to serve as is to collect the fees and then pass those through. We feel like that'll be a more cost-effective way for us than paying that flat monthly fee for fire marshal services. So that's how those are presented. They're not part of our fee schedule. They're pulled out as that addendum as all fire fees. Otherwise, everything is the same. And we, upon your approval of this, then it would go into effect February 21st.
Thank you. Any public comment, Donna?
No, we don't, Mr. Mayor.
Maybe a reading of resolution 1253-1122.
Resolution number 1253-1122. A resolution of the city of Shelton, Washington, updating and establishing the city's master fee schedule for fiscal year 2023.
Thank you, Donna. Do we have a motion?
I move to adopt resolution number 1253-1122 as presented.
Second.
Comments or questions? Sounds pretty easy. We have a motion and a second. Do you have a question? Oh, we have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 1253-1122 as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have another item from Mike, a resolution to repeal an emergency resolution that was passed at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So the main reason that I'm bringing this to you as the finance director is that as part of this emergency proclamation, it set forth certain stipulations about how utility bills would be paid, et cetera. And so we have found that we need to have a formal repeal of this. The emergency proclamation at the state level has since been repealed. I do want to point out that we have 4 remaining will pay agreements that we will continue to honor with utility rate payers, but otherwise everything is back to normal operations. And so ending the emergency proclamation is what has been recommended that we bring to you for action.
Thank you, Mike. Any public comment, Donna?
No, Mr. Mayor.
May we have a reading of resolution 1262-0123?
Resolution number 1262-0123. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Shelton, Washington, authorizing the repeal of resolution number 1157-0320, declaring a state of emergency related to COVID-19.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
We have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we waive the 3-touch rule and approve resolution number 1262-0123 as presented.
Any comments or questions?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, who was the second on that? Sharon, thank you.
Sure. Comments or questions? We have a motion and a second to waive the 3-touch rule and approve resolution number 1262-0123 as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public Works Director Jay Harris has information for us about a rate study contract.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, Jay Harris, your Public Works Director. In 2017, the city of Shelton completed a sewer and water rate study for the 2018 to 2023 rate period. The rates run out this year. The proposal is to hire FCS Group to look at the rates starting in 2024, maybe go out to 2028, 2026, right in that range. Usually we go out 3-4 years, sometimes 5, that sort of thing. We have completed the water and wastewater comprehensive plans, updated them. They're getting close to adoption. So we have really good capital improvement projects in there that we can talk about during the rate discussions and study. Comments from last meeting is you wanted to talk to FCS and staff about some of the rate proposals, ideas, projects, that sort of thing, a little early on in the process. So we'll be getting to you guys, probably later in the spring, April, May sort of thing, in a study session, to go over, a bunch of the items and sort of the lay of the land. And so staff recommends adoption of the resolution.
All right, anyone sign up for public comment, Donna?
No, Mr. Mayor.
May we have a reading of resolution number 1257-1222?
Resolution number 1257-1222. A resolution of the Council of the City of Shelton, Washington, authorizing the city manager to sign the professional services contract with FCS Group for a sewer and water rate and GFC study in the amount of $74,265.
All right, do we have a motion?
Move to adopt resolution number 1257-1222 as presented.
All right. Second. Thank you. Comments or questions? No. We have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 1257-1222 as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We have another item from Jay.
Good evening, council. Again, Jay Harris, your Public Works Director. Our existing Public Works yard has been down on Pine Street for over 75 years, real small to meet our needs. We have issues right now with pipe manholes, all sorts of material storage problems. We have too many things going on and too small of a space. So the proposal is to hire a Williams Architecture to assist us in the design and permitting of a larger fence laydown yard area. And then over time, that would transition into a new administration building, a fleet repair building, covered storage, those sorts of things. But immediately, we've had funding from a few years ago, and we've been in study mode on this thing for a while, is just to get the site graded, a fence up, a light out there, and manholes and some pipe and that sort of thing, and sort of start setting our public works up, 8 years, 5 years from now, into having a larger facility, that will last us 50 to 75 years. That's the end of my presentation, and staff recommends adopting the resolution.
Thank you. Any public comment, Donna?
Yes, we do. We have Chris Appleyard.
Hi, thank you. I actually mostly have questions. This is a new issue to me. And I was concerned about where this site would be. As I read through the newspaper article on it, there's been a lot of study about the space and seismically acceptable area, access, and why Loop Field isn't sufficient anymore. But I was wondering what studies have been done to assess the impact on our water supply in our watershed. And you just walk around that area and there's signs about not polluting there. And if that area is paved over, if it's used for storage, fuel supplies, a Vactor dump station, which I'm not even sure what that is, and salt bins, we know that that's going to end up in the groundwater there. So I'm just really concerned about the impact that's going to have. And then, earlier there was the talk about the annexation, which sounds like a whole new housing development is going to occur, and I'm not sure how all the watersheds are divided up. I'm not sure how the water supply is going to be, but we know that it seems like stuff always seeps, it always leaks, and that just doesn't seem a good place. And I'm kind of new and old to Shelton, graduated back in '74 and have not been back until this last year. But it seems like there are other areas that would be more choice than that area. So I would like to know what, studies have been done on space, but what studies have been done on the impact to our water supply. And I think that needs to be addressed. Thank
Should you
you.
leave her email with you? Maybe you can get into those questions.
Yep. Thank you.
Anyone else, Donna?
No one else, Mr. Mayor.
Right, maybe we have a reading of resolution number 1258-1222.
Resolution number 1258-1222. A resolution of the Council of the City of Shelton, Washington, authorizing the city manager to sign the work order with Williams Architecture for the design of the new Public Works Maintenance Yard project in the amount of $145,410.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I move to adopt resolution number 1258-1222 as presented.
All right, comments or questions for Jay?
Second.
Comments or questions for Jay?
If I could ask about the EOC has been brought up a few different times, in these excuse me, the City Emergency Operations Center being brought into this fold. I'm very supportive of that. I would like the city though to work with NACECOM and our other first responder agencies to make sure we're making that investment wisest way, because I know the county's pursuing a north end, the EOC, they've got their own, and there's money being spent, Homeland Security dollars, capitalizing on the Homeland Security region grant funds and other things. I know they're kind of sparse these days, but to account for emergency generation and fuel supply and all that kind of stuff, it's possible there could be a partnership there to help offset some costs. So I would just ask to support that or collaborate on that.
Yeah, so just a quick comment, the proposed building, which isn't in the near term future, would be immediately occupiable. After an event, it'd be designed to that. The Cascadia subduction zone earthquake supposed to be 9.0 off the coast, gonna hit at 8.0 here. Reoccurrence has been a long time. We're due. Okay, so in terms of the EOC though, that'd just be mainly for city operations. Most likely we would have people up at the county emergency operations center. But we would have a building that's immediately occupiable. Obviously, we have standby generation. We would have fueling there. We'd likely keep our fueling here also. And so, and then when the EOC isn't being used, it will be, the proposal is to have public parking and another little community conference room for folks to use, another resource in the area. It'll also be used for training for our staff, which we sorely lack right now. If we have large training exercises, we either have to do them in an equipment bay that's set up for equipment for, fleet maintenance and it's cold, or we come down here and we have a bunch of people pulling in here. So we do a lot of training, a lot of safety training, obviously. So that's on our radar. And yeah, the grant potential hopefully changes, that landscape changes in the future, where we can get part of the new building funded, especially for the emergency operations part, through a FEMA grant or such.
Thanks.
Yep.
I am once again encouraging us to go forward as soon as we can, because we know the big one's coming. And we don't want all our equipment to be covered by dirt and mud from the hill when that happens. So that's an encouragement to know that that'll be coming down the road.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we need to move from that site, that it's likely that some of the roadway or some of the materials can come down and hamper our operations. Obviously, none of the existing buildings on site none are seismically reinforced. So, we're living on borrowed time. The nearest seismic rated facility, probably the hospital has some components up there. Jeff, help me, any newer buildings of fire station? I'm not sure the last time it was remodeled, but we would have had to bring it up to standard.
The only other one I can think of is, PUD is the only other.
PUD, probably the new public works building, their EOC there is probably designed to be immediately occupiable, but we're a little sparse on buildings in a big vent here. And we could use them. So, I encourage, if we're building new schools, to at least have the gymnasium immediately occupiable, or, highly repairable, so it's occupiable, because we're probably gonna need some room for people and services.
Well, not only that, the equipment that we would need for the roads and for the emergency equipment, if that's all taken out,
We could be blocked in there.
we would be,
Yep.
locked in.
We do have the Warren agreement, which allows us to access anybody in the state near immediately and to get equipment on the way. And we would have to obviously reimburse them, but we do have ways to get stuff here quickly. Also, another thing we can do is build partnerships with other cities that are a little farther east than us, right? That they have men, equipment, materials that will desperately need need to get water online right away. Is one of the biggest roads, some roads open to the hospitals and such. Everyone needs a gallon of water a day, which we're pretty set up. We got a lot of different water sources here. We would need to put in some filtration and some sanitation to get everyone a gallon of water a day. So those are some of the challenges that we need to work on in the next few years.
Very good.
Again, this is a 5 or 10 year project and there's a process. We're not going to build anything that's going to harm the environment. We're not going to do it personally. The state's not going to let us do it, or either it's the federal government. So everything that we do is going to be, there's a process.
There's a wellhead protection area. We stay out of that. We have to meet the state stormwater requirements, which is pretty extensive. Vector truck will go into the sewer, all concrete. It's not going into the ground, right? It goes, that dumps directly into the sewer. Fueling stations are designed much different, now. Those oil water separators go to the sewer. Salt bin building goes to the sewer, also covered, also because the salt can't get wet, obviously. So you keep the rain out of there. So a lot of those things will come out though when we go to final design. But the proposal right now is to fence a yard, grade fence, get some gravel down, get a yard out there and move a bunch of materials. So we have everything in one spot. We sort of have a lot of pipe and manholes and that sort of thing all over the map here. And we want to try to get everything to one place and then eventually start building the other facilities.
Since we're putting a sounds like a Vector decant pad or something there, I'm assuming that can generate revenue for the city as well, right? We could have.
Typically not, that's typically for our uses, but what you're talking about is like septic receiving from the septic haulers and pumpers. That is a revenue generating endeavor. I've been involved with that and it's a lot of work to get that done right. They can bring in some highly acidic water. I'm not expecting, and you could cause issues with your treatment processes, i.e. kill bacteria, right? So you need to watch that pretty close. We bring some in, but we're not a retail type of septic dump place, but we could look at that. That is a potential revenue source, but we probably wouldn't do it at that location. It'd probably be down at the plant. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I just wanted to sum up. So we're trying to move the plant that's in a low location that could possibly flood or get earthquake damage with 19th, 20th century, early 20th century technology. We're going to move it up to high ground where it's safer, 21st century technology, if we can afford it, in a safer place where it's more accessible if there's an emergency.
That's
Is that fair to
correct.
say?
That's correct, with multiple ways in and out. And in terms of traffic generation, it's quite minimal. I mean, we have people that show up for work in the morning and then city trucks that leave, but it's more of an industrial type of use, I think you would put it, that we don't have a high traffic generation rate. But when we go through land use planning, we're going to have to identify what our traffic impacts are and where those impacts are at.
All right. Any other comments or questions? We have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 1258-1222 as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Mark and Facilities Director, Park and Facility Director is Mark Ziegler, has information for us about some advisory committee appointments.
It's been a late night, Mayor. Thank you again, Mayor, Deputy Mayor. Pleased to bring to you recommendation of 2 appointments to the Parks and Recreation Citizens Advisory Committee. We recently had 2 openings due to expiring terms at the end of 2022. Mr. Mel Schneider has submitted a letter of interest to be appointed again to another term beginning this year in 2023. We received a letter of interest from Dan Gagnon to be appointed as well. Mel's been a member of great standing and great service to the advisory committee, and Mr. Gagnon has been around for many, many years. In fact, was a teacher of mine at Mount View Elementary School some years ago. So value his service to our community as well. So with your approval tonight, we'll notify Mr. Schneider and Mr. Gannon of their appointments, and we have a meeting scheduled for next Monday at 5:30 PM here in the Civic Center. Looking forward to working with these individuals to help advise the council on parks and recreation issues in the community.
Thank you, Mark. Donna, anyone sign up public comment?
No, Mr. Mayor.
And do we have a motion?
I move to appoint Melvin Schneider and Dan Gagnon to the Parks and Recreation Citizens Advisory Committee.
Comments or questions? We have a motion and a second to appoint Melvin Schneider and Dan Gagnon to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We made it to our last action item. City Manager Jeff Knight has details about a designated crisis responder.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of council. Throughout the summer and early fall of 2022, the city convened a homelessness task force. It was made up of individuals both from public health and Mason County, city representatives, as well as representatives from the business community, local business community, and homelessness advocates, people that are serving that population. That group developed a set of 7 recommendations that were presented to city council in autumn of last year and last fall. And one of those recommendations, a priority one, was for the implementation of a DCR, which is a designated crisis responder. It is the only individual in Washington state that is empowered by RCW to evaluate and, if necessary, hold individuals that are experiencing mental health crisis. With that set of recommendations, the city had the opportunity through a grant with the Association of Washington Cities and the Washington State Healthcare Authority to fund an alternative grant response team. And our idea for an alternative grant response team was for a DCR. We were lucky enough to be awarded funding for that DCR, and we've been working with Olympic Health and Recovery Services to provide that service to our community. They have a final contract that is part of your packet this evening that I would be signing to implement that program immediately upon council approval. And we'll have that DCR here in our community working almost immediately. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I would ask that you waive the 3-touch rule for this item and approve my ability to sign that contract.
Thank you, Jeff. Any public comment, Donna?
No, Mr. Mayor.
And do we have a motion?
I move to waive the 3-touch rule and direct the city manager to sign the contract with designated crisis responder services with Olympic Health and Recovery Services.
Comments or questions?
We ironed out the co-responder role.
I'm sorry.
We ironed out the co-responder role with the PD and everybody. Is that all?
So the onboarding has taken place with Olympic Health and Recovery Services, so they know where their space will be. They know how operationally that will work, although there will be some bugs to iron out like there is with any new program. But all the details that we could anticipate, we have.
And then do we have a single DCR, or are they kind of gonna float?
Yeah, we will have a single DCR. The hours are in the contract, I believe. Tuesday, it's 4:10, so it'd be 10 in the morning to 8 at night. So we'll have somebody here on call. They will be available to help with the wider community in Mason County, but primary duties will be here within the city of Shelton.
I think this is huge. We've had a gap in mental illness. We have people in crisis. And we call DCRs out of Olympia or Thurston County.
Lacey.
And 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours later, they may show up and that person is gone. And then they show up, they're gone. They go back to Thurston County, the person's back somewhere in crisis. And I think this is really going to be a big help downtown with some of the people that are in crisis. So kudos to staff or yourself, whoever applied for this grant and went out and got it. I think this is going to be a game changer.
Yeah. Based on other cities' response to this, working with OHRS, and my only concern is how do we continue to fund it? And are we actively working on that? And,
Yeah. So we do have funding through the grant through the middle part of this year. I do have an agreement in principle, although not in writing, although I'll be working on that. The goal was to get this person operating as soon as possible within our community. With council's approval tonight, we'll move on immediately to figure out a sustainable funding source. And I think I have that figured out. We just need to get everybody to sign.
One thing I'd love to see improve are the hours. 410s is tough. It does leave a lot of time that we don't have that person.
Yeah.
So, but it's a great step.
It's a great start.
It's a great step.
And
Without a
we
doubt,
still-
I'm not coming down on it. but-
Yeah, and we still will have, so we'll have the crisis responder here during those hours. On the off hours, when that person is not available, we'll still have the ability to call folks from Lacey, which presents its own challenges,
Yeah.
but
Perfect, cool.
So there'd be a way of changing those hours if needed.
yes, that was something that I talked with the operations officer for Olympic Health and Recovery Services about. If we see a need in different hours of the day or different times, there's the ability to change that. Although the data from Olympic Health and Recovery Services shows that the early evening from about 4 to about 8 is generally the most active. But if we see something more unique here in our community, then we have the ability to address that.
All right. Seeing no other questions or comments, we have a motion and a second to waive the three-touch rule. And direct city manager to sign the contract for designated crisis responder services with Olympic Health and Recovery Services. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carries. Toward the end, Jeff, will you give us a city manager report?
I will. So we don't have to make a motion to extend your meeting. I'll go pretty quick. We have our new GIS specialist started yesterday. The asset management program is moving along. We're getting that implemented. Enterprise asset management, EAM, you'll hear it referred to as. That is going to be a very big deal for our community. I know that council's, one of their highest priorities has been to maintain the assets that we have. That is by far the cheaper alternative than replacement and over time. And we're excited to have that, have Isaac here and excited to have him part of the team. He has a lot of experience doing this kind of work. So will help us out tremendously. MACECOM has instituted a new text 911 program. And I wanted to highlight that for everyone that is now available here in our community. Spring Parks and Recreation Program registration is open or will be open shortly. It's open. So those programs getting ready to go after the rain stops, fingers crossed. Empty Bowls will be in April this year, and we'll have more announcements on that coming up soon. And the last thing I wanted to mention, not last Friday, the Friday before last, the mayor and I went to Longview, Washington, and toured their new pallet shelter community. 48 shelters, if I remember correctly, and they have contracted for homelessness services. They have contracted with Salvation Army to operate that and staff it. Really well organized. I'm sure the mayor has some thoughts on that. What we determined from talking with their mayor and their city manager about that shelter is, I believe it was $1.4 million in capital cost for the paving and everything else, and an annual operating budget of 1.2 million. So not necessarily inexpensive. 1.2 million a year is, if Mike is still here, Mike's here. Yeah, I can hear his head shaking here, but that's a concrete example of a shelter in our general area, what it costs to operate and what it costs to build. So I didn't know if Mayor wanted to add any thoughts to that.
It was a very impressive operation. It was well ran, well organized. They had rules there. You got to be in at a certain time. If you're not there at a certain time, the gate's locked. You're out for the night. I just thought it was a very well organized operation, but yeah, $1.2 million a year seems a little bit out of our price range, something like that.
Good information.
Yep. Good data point. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I had a couple, but I forgot. Think of them later.
Yep.
Okay, council have any other discussion? All right. This meeting, or next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, February 21st at 6 p.m.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, we do not have a topic for your study session on the 14th. So happy Valentine's Day all.
Bah humbug. This meeting is adjourned at 7:48 p.m.